Welcome back to This Indulgent Life with me, Mary Cook, and this is episode number 29. Today on This Indulgent Life, we are continuing the series from the Calm and Centered Summit, and we are speaking with Denise Wagstaff of Denise Wagstaff Speech Therapy and Accent Services on what speech development has to do with literacy skills. She gives us lots of amazing tips on increasing speech development, which helps with literacy. So can't wait to see you there. Welcome to another episode of This Indulgent Life, where I give you tools, strategies, and encouragement to help you parent with confidence. I'm Mary, and after having my own personal revelation on what it meant to break the cycles of anger and guilt, to connect deeply and live joyfully in both my parenting and personal life, I began helping other mamas do the same. If you want to be inspired, if you want to be a more mindful parent, if you want to know what it takes to take that next step in creating your extraordinary life, then you are in the right place. Welcome back, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you again. I want to just go over a little housekeeping before we get started, as usual. And I want to remind you that if you are enjoying these podcasts, or this video, I would love it if you could subscribe and leave an honest rating and review, especially in iTunes, so that other people can find these podcasts as well. Also, don't forget there is a free Facebook group. In fact, there are now 2 free Facebook groups. One is my normal parenting group, which is facebook.com/groups/thisindulgentlife. And that's where I help mamas of littles parent with confidence, joyfully, peacefully, and mindfully. And then the second one was a pop-up group, which I am continuing to support during this quarantine self-isolation time, and that is facebook.com/groups/pandemic parenting. It was our Calm and Centered Summit, which these next several podcast videos are going to be all about. Okay, so I'm going to try to do 2 a week, but sometimes I may only do 1 a week. And basically, these are the speakers that came together in a time of crisis to help you out in this transition. And so I'm so thankful for these people, and I cannot wait to share them with you. But if you want to go ahead and jump in, all of the videos are available in that second group, as well as many links and resources and PDFs. All these things are available to you in that group. So go ahead and go join that. For now, I'd love to introduce you to Denise Wagstaff of Denise Wagstaff Speech Therapy and Accent Services. Welcome back for our 4 o'clock edition of the summit today. I'm so excited to introduce to you Denise. Denise is a certified speech language pathologist with over 25 years of experience working with children and their families. She also offers accent modification training, but her mom heart really thrives when helping parents improve their skills so they can maximize the quality of their children's speech, language, and literacy skills. Denise grew up in New York City, but lives in Toronto, Ontario, with her Canadian husband of 31 years. Together, they've raised 2 sons, and they kind of get a kick out of traveling whenever they can, which her and I have that kind of same heart. Love the traveling.
Absolutely.
So how are you doing today, Denise?
I'm doing all right. We're doing all right. Getting things done, and things are moving along, so it's all good.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do and why it's important for parents.
Well, once we get rolling, I'll give you some information on the differences between speech and language. But I've been practicing, like you said, Mary, for over 25 years. The numbers are getting a little scary now to say out loud. But I really do enjoy working with families, and I see clients in their homes, so it really gives us an opportunity to kind of see what's going on in terms of the communication and what issues could be going on, even aside from how the child is doing on their own. There's a lot to be said about communication and an environment that we're in and how we can arrange and, manipulate the environment to maximize opportunities. So I do a lot of that, and it's been fun. It's been good. I really enjoy it.
So tell us why speech
Hmm.
influences literacy and why that's important to know, and just tell
For
us
sure.
all about it so we know we can help.
Okay. All right. So here you go. So let me give you some quick definitions so that you have, we're all on the same page and we're speaking the same language. A lot of people wonder why we call ourselves speech language pathologists and not just speech pathologists. I think it's a terrible name, because since we're in the communication business, you'd think we'd have a simplified name, but there's really no way around it. But the differences between speech and language, I want you to think of them as two separate areas, even though, of course, they're all intertwined. But speech has to do with the sounds that are in the words. So if a child is having a hard time with speech development or speech sound development, you might see either they don't say the sounds that you would expect them to say for a child their age. Either they're making substitutions, or maybe they're leaving out the sounds, or they can't get the sound sequenced in the order that they're supposed to be in to make a word clear. So all of these different things fit into the speech thing. So child has a speech problem, you'll see maybe substitutions like wed for red, or, I like that, and it's a like instead of a like. Okay, so that's speech. So put that aside, and now we'll look at the language end. So language has two parts that we want to think of. Language has to do with receptive language. Think of receiving, and that's the information that you're able to understand, the language that you understand. So if somebody's having a receptive language problem, you might see maybe they don't understand the directions that you would expect a child that age to understand. You might say, it's time to go get your shoes and put your coat on, and they may not really follow that. Or they might not know just vocabulary that you would expect them to understand, or they might not understand grammar forms that you would expect them. Little pieces of language that show meaning, like a plural S, or like a past tense ED, like, we walked yesterday. They might not understand that you're talking about something that already happened. So that would be a receptive language issue. And I was going to say one little quick fun way to kind of test, or at least to get a little bit of an idea of how your child is doing with their receptive language, is to maybe give them a direction, but be really careful about giving them any other extra information. So by that, I mean, don't be gesturing, and don't be, looking towards whatever it is you're referring to, right? So you can run a little test like this, because a lot of times when a receptive language thing is going on, it's not always so obvious, because we have so many other aspects of communication that come into play, right? When we're talking, we're gesturing, we're looking at it, we're using our routines that have all this information embedded right within the routine without any words, right? So to make sure that a child is really understanding, you want to give them a little bit of a task to do that they're familiar with, but it's out of routine, and you're not going to give any gestures or any expression that tells them what to do, right? So
So
go ahead.
before you keep going though, what ages are we looking at here? Because I know it's completely developmentally normal for today he's 3, my now
Oh,
3-year-old, my very newly 3-year-old, to do all these things. So
mhm.
at what age are we really trying to assess and see if they need that help?
I think, right from the very beginning, we're looking for cues that a child is understanding. So you can tell, you're looking for facial expression, you're looking for their reactions, their physical reactions, to give you an inclination as to whether they're understanding or not. This is one of the things that you can look at. I'll go back to that idea. It's hard for me to give you a pinpoint to say at this age they will understand this, but like a 2-year-old is understanding it, like a 1 or 2-step directive.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're understanding the names of common things within their environment, right? So they
But
know.
what about you were talking about misusing um, letters and sounds and
Yeah, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. Okay. So that's why I want to explain the differences. So if going back to the idea of kind of testing to see if your child is understanding what you might expect them to understand for that time, give them a little task to do and see if they can do it without giving them a lot of a lot of cues, a lot of gestures, right? So for example, if at 10 o'clock, you usually go to a play group. Well, not these days, right? But but let's say at 10 o'clock you go to a play group, and your little guy knows that after breakfast you guys are going to tidy up, and you're going to get your shoes on, and you're going to get your coat on. You're going to go to the door. Mom's going to grab her purse. Mom's going to grab her keys. All of these things are part of the routine. So if you say, go, come on, it's time to go, we're going to go get our, we're going to go to the play group. Well, we don't really know. Is the child understanding the actual language, or are they understanding that we finished breakfast, mom got her purse, all those little pieces that send that message. So that's why I'm saying you can do a little test by saying, give them a little job that they know where the garbage is, and they know where I don't know, a wrapper that they just ate a snack, they know how to put it in the garbage. You can say, honey, go put your wrapper in the garbage, but don't look at the garbage, don't give them facial expression, just look at them and see if they can understand just the language. That's a good way to kind of get an idea. Is my child really understanding the language, or are they relying on the other cues? Okay. Of course, when we're typically, interacting with our kids, we want to be using gesture and give all this information, because there's a lot of information there. We want them to learn that. We want them to be exposed to that. And we want to make it, kind of use every avenue that we can to make them understand and help them learn and grow.
And this, I actually have personal experience of this. When I was a teenager, I worked a lot in our children's industry at church, and our ministry. He was 6 years old, and everyone just thought he was such a bad kid because he never seemed to really listen. And, if you really got into his level and made him look at you or whatever, then he would listen, but otherwise he never listened. And it turns out that he learned how to read our gestures and read our lips, but if he wasn't looking there, he could not hear at all.
Oh, that's tough. Yeah. And to think at that age to go so many, that's why.
Yeah. So getting the tubes has helped, but it's just that kids are so smart that sometimes we miss things if we're not paying attention.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We don't really know what to look for sometimes. We just don't really know what to look for. Yeah. So that's a perfect example of how things can kind of go. We kind of think the child is understanding, but really they're maybe not, or you think it's a behavior thing, but really it's a communication thing.
Yeah.
So let's go back to, we have language, we have speech, the sounds and the words, we have language, receptive and expressive. So we kind of got the idea about what receptive language is. Like I said, again, think of receiving. Then expressive is how you make your wants and needs known to other people. So you want to be able to see that a child can know the vocabulary you expect them, that at their age, they can put together a couple of words that you would expect at those ages. So just to give you some idea of what to be looking for, a 1-year-old child should have maybe about 10 words. They don't put them together yet, but they have about 10 words that they can say. It may not be perfect. It may not be perfectly clear, but if they're using the same thing consistently for that item every time, we can count that as a word. Okay. So 1-year-old, you want to see using one word utterances, but about 10 words in their vocabulary. 2 years old, this is the easiest way to remember. 1-year-old, 1 word. 2-year-old, 2 words. 3-year-old, 3 words. 4-year-old, 4 words. You want to see that length of their phrases and sentences getting longer as they grow. A year-old will have about a 10-word vocabulary. 2-year-old will have, sorry, I'm getting things all over popping up on my screen. Like a 2-year-old will have about 300 words in their vocabulary. Like a 3-year-old will have about 1,000 words. 4 to 5, you see about 1,500 words. So you'll see a big jump between 2 and 3, where the numbers will just explode in terms of their vocabulary if their expressive language is growing well. Okay. So if we talk about those 3 areas, let's go back to speech sound stuff and hit on the idea of literacy and how this feeds into literacy. A lot of times when a child is having a hard time learning to read, we can see a lot of signs early. And we have to really be aware of the speech sound development that we should see. Let me explain the difference between, if we're looking in the literacy world, we're talking literacy and reading, everyone is very familiar with phonics and the word phonics, okay? So I'm going to give you the difference between phonology and phonics, okay? They're very, very different, and it's important to know the differences. Phonics has to do with the symbol. Phonics is all about written. text, okay? If I have, say for an example, I have this, so it's going to be backwards, right? If I have, can you see it?
There you go. No, it's forward. Okay.
Okay, so if I have that symbol, we all know that makes the B sound. It represents the B sound. This shape represents the sound. That's phonics, okay? So when we're talking about letter sound awareness, we know that this symbol represents the shape. Now, phonological awareness is a lot different. Phonology has to do with what you're able to hear, okay? So phonology has to do with the sounds that are in the words. And this is a very big thing. If you have a hard time hearing individual sounds within a word, your phonological weak areas, skills are weak, okay? And if that area is weak, reading can really be a challenge. Learning to read can be a very big challenge. So that's why I'll give you some ideas of some things that you can play with, and ways that you can see if your child is developing in terms of their phonological skills. Okay, so let me give you some examples. Let's give you like a phonological task. If I say to you, well, let me give you a hierarchy first. There's a hierarchy when it comes to phonology. Okay, the first thing that we see is that we're able to recognize what a word is. A child recognizes what a word is. So they realize if I say cup, that little unit of cup, mug, it refers to this, okay? Then the next level is that we realize that, let's say I had the word table. I start to realize that the word table is made up of chunks, te and bull, these syllables, and I can separate them. They can come apart, okay? These little chunks, these little sound chunks. The highest level is we would call phoneme awareness, a sound. Another word for sound is a phoneme, right? So if I have awareness that this is table, this is table, then when I start to realize that, hey, this part is made of t and a, this part is made of b and ul, okay? Those individual phonemes is what we see at the highest level of phonological awareness and phonological skill. When a child can't hear these separate pieces and always just hear that word as a unit, we realize, okay, they're not really getting all those individual pieces. So imagine you're trying to spell a word and you don't get that there's individual pieces in that. If I can't break it apart, how am I going to spell that? How do I understand that it's made of pieces? I don't get it. So this is why phonological awareness is such an important critical skill. And we see kids that are weak in literacy have a hard time with phonological skills. And it's not that they're not hearing the sounds. It's that they're hearing it, but they're processing it differently in their brain. So this is an important thing to be aware of. We need to be sure that our child can hear those individual sounds. Now, we're talking, this starts to happen around, we can see signs as a child's having a hard time with this stuff. We can see other signs early, very early. But by about 4 years old, we want to see that a child is able to maybe recognize a rhyme, that they can hear it, that lake and rake sound the same. There's a sound that's, if we make up some silly stuff, they should be able to hear that, they can recognize it. Or around that time too, maybe a little bit later, by 5 years old, you want to make sure your child can make a rhyme, make a silly rhyme, play some silly games, bake a cake and make a lake, just play with it. Because that idea, if you think of what phonological awareness is and phonological skills are, right? Talked about hearing those individual sounds, you realize that a rhyme is all about this little piece at the beginning is going to change. I put something else in and the rest stays the same. It's about that individual sound. And that when we change it, it changes the meaning completely, right? So when we're trying to teach our children to read, we want to make sure that they have that ability, that they have that skill. And if they don't, we really need to address it with very specific type of teaching. It can be taught. It can sometimes be very hard for some kids to be able to hear that. But that's, that's something that we can talk about if we have time. But this is something that very often we're not even really seeing taught in a lot of school boards, because it's really not part of training for a lot of people, a lot of teachers. Even reading specialists sometimes aren't trained in this. I don't know what your experience has been,
Yeah.
but I see across Canada and the States, it's not something that's very clear.
Well, that and when you kept talking about it, it made me realize, like, or not realize, because I've always kind of felt this way, how much of a disservice we're doing in the early elementary levels here in the States, at least. I don't know how it is in
In
Canada.
Canada, it's very similar, very, very similar.
Focusing purely on sight words. Like, it's not bad to be able to recognize a word fast, but to only focus on sight words and not really
You're right.
the sounds and stuff behind it.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean, I saw it as a teacher as well, but
yeah.
with the way you're talking about it, it really brings it home.
Yeah, it's a really big deal. And unfortunately, a lot of, right now, a lot of ways that we're teaching children to read, they kind of use a 3Q system, where they'll have a pattern book, and it's the same all the way through the whole book. There's only one word at the end that's different. So the child, a lot of times people think, oh, my child is reading, but really, they're really not reading. They're just memorizing.
Yep.
And if they don't know what that last word is, we're encouraging them to, okay, look at the picture. What's the first sound that you hear? And take a guess. Does it make sense? Well, is that reading? No, that's guessing. I don't like that. Don't guess. We want to be giving our kids the cues and the ability to figure out what it is, right? So what happens in this kind of scenario, if a child is having a hard time, is that they manage to make it through grade 1, grade 2. Once they hit about grade 3, they really kind of hit a wall, because you can't guess anymore. There's too many vocabulary words. There are too many different ones, and you're not getting as much graphic text. There's mainly text and not a lot of pictures, right? You start to get less pictures and more words, and now it's like, maybe at the start in grade 1 or grade 2, the patterns are going away. And maybe when I was relying on the shape of the word, a lot of kids will rely on the shape of the word. Like for, let's say the word hat, right? There's a tall one, a short one, and a tall one. Well, once you start to have too many, you just can't do it anymore. And that's where actually, usually in about grade 3 is when a lot of kids really hit the wall. And it's really not that it's not that they hit the wall so much as we realize that, hey, this little one really isn't reading, really doesn't have any word attack skills, and really can't hear these individual pieces, and they're struggling. But we can see a lot of things a lot earlier than that. We don't need to wait that long. That's why I wanted to talk about this, because it's such a critical time for kids when it comes to learning to read. We want to make sure they have these phonological skills, and if they don't, how we can strengthen those, because it will play into their literacy skills down the road.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. So how are we doing for time?
You're okay.
All right. Any questions around that you can think of, Mary, that maybe some people might think of or want to come up with?
I think just keep going, because I based on what you said, it feels like you're going to keep going and how they can use this knowledge. So yeah, I think that's really what they're looking for.
Okay. So if we go back to the idea of phonological awareness and trying to strengthen these skills, when with your even your 3-year-old, you can start to fiddle around with some of this stuff. But 4 years old, certainly by 5 years old, we want to see that a child has that word awareness. One of the things that you can do is when you're reading, I should have grabbed a little book. I didn't think to grab a book. But as you're reading, but point to the words. So you're kind of showing that, here's this word, and there's a little space, and there's a next group of sounds. Okay. But one way you can kind of see if your child is grasping this concept that these represent the words that you're saying out loud is that you tell your little one, okay, you know what? I'm going to read the words, but you point to them for me. And you can see if a child has that one-to-one correlation, they'll point to each word. If they don't, they're going to be all over the place, right? You'll see that they're going too fast or they're going too slow. And that's a way to kind of check, do they really understand that this is a word, this is a word, this is a word? And that one-to-one correlation is one of the first steps that we want to see, because we want to see, in terms of phonological growth, that they're getting this one-to-one correlation, they're getting this word concept, okay? So that's one little thing, another little thing that you can do to try to see how your child is doing, maybe around 4 years old, 5 years old, okay? 5 for sure. So once you have this word awareness, then you can start to fiddle around with syllable awareness. So you can do like, syllable claps, you clap for each syllable, that kind of thing. And some ways that you can play, hold on, I'll get my grab bag. I have a grab bag and I use it a lot. I have a couple of different ones. But one way to kind of work on a lot of these skills and just to kind of play and make it fun is set up a grab bag, get a whole bunch of different little toys. And I'll be honest, little, could be anything. Could be anything you grab from around the house or little toys from like a fast food restaurant. Those are usually pretty good because they're safe and they're current and they're fun. Let's say, so what you can do is you can work on word awareness by pulling out, have your child pull one out. You pull one out, model it for them first, so they know what you're going to be doing. So, okay, I'm going to take out a toy. I'm going to tell you what I got. I'm going to say 3 words. I got turtle. What did you get? I got cars. Something like that, right? If a child's at a 2-word level, you could do 2 words. A car, a turtle, a boat, whatever it is you pull out. Okay, if they're speaking in 3 words, give them a 3-word phrase. See, because I say that because if a child is not expressively ready to say a 2-word phrase or a 3-word phrase, you're not going to be able to, even if you model it right then, if they don't own that language, you won't see it come out.
That's so
they have
good.
to own it. Yeah, they have to own it before they can express it. Okay, that's that difference between receptive and expressive.
I think parents really need to understand, like, they need to own all learning before they can really do it on on demand, right? Like
right, just to be able to express.
Just because you think they need to be there right now doesn't mean they are.
Right, and you know what? Even if you model it and model it, we can see developmentally where a child is going, where they're going to be, because you can model it right then, but it's never going to come out unless they own it, unless they really understand it. And for parents, I kind of explain that in the way that if you go to a conference or some sort of a lecture or something, it's a perfect way of understanding how we're able to understand something, but we really don't fully understand it unless we can tell it back to someone. Yeah. So you can and I'm sitting in the conference and I'm sitting in the lecture and, oh yeah, okay, I get that. Oh, okay. Well, then somebody says, so what was that all about? And they go, well, kind of talking about how, this kind of thing. So when you maybe have the gist of it, but you really couldn't explain it well enough so somebody could really understand it. And that shows the difference between receptive language and expressive language. And you really have to own it before you're able to come out with it.
Yeah.
So going back to the idea of working on word awareness to increase phonological skills, you can do that kind of thing. You can do.
So before you keep going, that whole grab bag idea, they could keep going with that and becoming more like, I have a purple car. I have a smooth purple car.
Exactly. You can keep adding more and more adjectives, you can grow vocabulary, you can grow the length of utterance, how long their phrases are with that. Exactly. You can make it very, very, very language rich. You can work on all sorts of stuff like that. You can work on, from color, shape things to pronouns. And, sometimes I'll have 2 of the same, so I can talk about plurals, as they took up. I have 2 pirates, whatever it might be, or you can talk about a possessive. Oh, this is his shirt, and your pronouns, you can do it's his boots. You can go on and on. There's tons of things that you can do. And I find that I've been using grab bags for a long time, and they never get tired of it. The kids never get tired of it. You get to kind of make it be fun. You make it be a surprise. You say no peeking, and that they always want to see what's going to come out of that bag. So that's I love grab bags. I think they're great. So going back to that idea about the word awareness, so you can even do something where you put some squares of tape on the ground. You can or make some sort of outline. If you're outside, maybe make some squares with sticks or something, just to make it more tactile and more more physical, more gross motor. Maybe you jump from one to the other, or step from one square to the other as you say a word in a sentence. I have a dog. I have a mom. Whatever. But there's a way, by doing that, you're kind of giving them the awareness that these are separate pieces, and that we're learning that, okay, now I get what a word really is. the concept of a word. And then, really, it's the same sort of thing, similar as you move up that hierarchy. Once you get the word awareness, then you can do the same thing with syllable awareness. Same exact idea, right? So you take a 2 or 3 syllable word and you jump through those, the hula hoops that you laid out on the lawn or something like that. You can do, so that kind of, you get that point, right? That's clear enough? So then to move along to the phoneme part, the highest level in the phonological, hierarchy is a phoneme, is an individual sound. Okay, so what you can do for that is I'll use things like, another one before I go into that, just for word awareness or syllable awareness, you can take a ball and roll it back and forth every time you say a word. I like pizza. I like, right? This is the idea of marking each piece, okay? And sometimes I'll grab whatever I have around to individually show that there's individual sounds there. I mean, when I say anything, could be pencils, could be paper clips if I'm in a jam, could be anything, right? We just want to kind of have separate little things that you can use to show each individual sound in a word. Okay, so let's say we're at that level where kids know they're solid on the word awareness, they're solid on the syllable awareness. Then we're going to go to that phoneme, that individual sound awareness. So let's say if I had like the word dog, I might have, can you see that? Circles on there?
Kind of, yeah.
You can.
So just if you can't see, it's just 3 circles next to each other on a mirror.
Yeah. Oh, it's not good because it's so shiny.
I see myself.
Anyway, the idea was, I could just do the boring side. There we go. Just play. So if we had 3 circles, let's say for each sound,
Okay.
you can say like, okay, what sounds do you hear? You can even start early, like just kind of play around with sounds and let your child be like my echo. Okay, let's play the echo game. I'm going to say a sound, then you say it just like me. Ready? See if they do. They do ba. See if they do ba. Right? So just kind of play along with sounds like that. But if you want to get to the word level with it, if you have, let's say you have a little box or a little piece of paper on the table, you can do it with blocks. Let's see. How many sounds do you hear when I say mat? Mat. Let's stretch it out. And you can do this with your kids. Stretch it out. Tell them you got a big wad of bubble gum. You just stretch it out. Right? And you go, mat. Did you hear that? Remember, not about the letters. It's not about the letters. It's about what you hear. Okay? Mat. And actually encourage them to be watching your mouth because there's a lot of information there. So if I have this and we're going to do it on something to make it more physical, I would say, okay, mat. I'd put a little token there. I can't do it because I can't hold it up because of gravity. That darn gravity. Okay, so I would go like at, and then the third one. Do you hear it? At. Let's put them back together. Mat. Mat. Can you hear it? Do you hear the sounds? I heard 3 sounds when I said at. Okay, so that's the way that we kind of be fiddling around and exposing our child to the idea that there are these sounds within the words. Okay, you can do it when you do something like that. Let's say I had a word that had the same sound in it. Instead of, let's say I had the word pop. Maybe I would want the sounds that are the same to be the same color, right? Because it's saying that it's the same, even though it's not a letter. It sounds the same. So we want to represent it as the same, right? So you could do something for like the word pop. Let's see if I can hold this up all 3 at once, Mary. Let's see. There you go. So we go, okay. Can you get what I mean?
Yep.
And that will kind of help a child to see the different pieces in there and also recognize, oh yeah, those ones are the same. And this kind of play is really, this is what we're looking at when it comes to phonological awareness. We want to be able to see that a child can hear those individual sounds, even imitating, like say like 3 sounds in a row. When we talked about that echo game, if a child is having a hard time with phonological awareness, you might find they can't even imitate 2 sounds that you say. They can't imitate 3 sounds that you say. So this is an important thing. You've got to fiddle around with it and see how your child does. Can they hear those individual sounds? Are they able to imitate those 3 individual sounds? That's important too, because that plays into their working memory. If they remember those 3 sounds in a row, if you can't remember one sound to the next, this is going to play a role in terms of your learning to read. Okay. So these are all little pieces that we want to pay attention to. And I just, my biggest thing for the whole thing today is I really want people to be aware of that difference between phonics and phonological awareness, and to be aware that where their child is with this kind of stuff. The one last thing I was going to throw in is that if you have anyone in your family that has struggled with reading, there's about the numbers that we have from the National Institute of Health, I believe, about 20% of people struggle with reading, struggle with literacy, and have some form of dyslexia. It's a very, very common problem. And we know that if we use this specific type of teaching, we can teach anyone to learn how to read using like a multisensory, a systematic approach. There are some very good programs that usually are Orton Gillingham based, but we don't need to go into that. But if somebody had questions,
I know for a fact there is at least one person in our group that has joined because she has a son, and I want to say it was the mom with a 6th grader who has a son with dyslexia, and she's unsure of how to help him right now. Now that she has to be the teacher.
Okay, well, there are definitely some programs. Maybe she can grab my email. I'd be happy to share some other information. But one of the biggest things is you want to be sure that the teaching that you're using is Orton Gillingham based. It's a multisensory, systematic approach. And that kind of breaks my heart, because I bet this poor little guy has been through a nightmare trying to learn to read. And that's one of the hardest things to hear, because mom has probably been trying so hard to help him. And without the right program, it's going to be so hard, and maybe never be able to reach the ability that he has. I mean, it's no reflection on someone's intelligence level. IQ levels are usually very, very bright kids with wonderful alternate, they have a lot of other skills because they think a little differently. They're great at problem solving. They're usually really very artistic and creative and out of the box thinkers. But going through school can really be tough when somebody's that. It's really tough.
I know people that have taken their kids out of school because they've just fought so hard with.
Yes. And I have too. And I haven't said to anyone directly, but oftentimes my gut is like, you know what, if I were in that boat, I would rather homeschool my child than to have them deal with that. And the problem is that it's just so hard on their self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And I think we all know that, you can accomplish anything if you think you can accomplish it. If you think you can't, you're going to really struggle, because our mindset and that, once you feel like you're really been, just your self-esteem has been plummeted, it's really tough. It's tough. So we hate to see our kids going through stuff like that. I mean, everybody has things, but it's tough.
If you have a couple of programs, maybe you could put them in the comments for people to have an idea. I know one that my friend adores is called Logic of English.
Okay.
She says, I know she has I think she's grade 2 or 3 now. And she was one that took her kid out of school because she just could not get the teachers to even recognize that there was a problem, even though she herself has dyslexia.
Right. Well, usually there's about a 50% family history. That's why I tell parents, if there's anybody in the immediate family, even a little bit further back, that struggle with reading, be very aware, because it's about a 50% case history, family history. We see it popping up. But in terms of some specific programs, I'm really fond of one called the Barton Reading and Spelling Program. I like that one, and a lot of parents might like it because it's, as long as they're able to hear, as long as their phonological skills are strong enough, they can teach it with their kids. There are tons of homeschoolers that use this program because it's very scripted, and it's a very It's very set out. It's kit by kit. I don't get anything by, I'm not, like
Yeah.
advocating for that one specifically, but it's the one that I like and I use. But there's other, Slingerland is one, Wilson is another one. And Orton Gillingham itself, that the the original Orton Gillingham program is also very good. But in terms of ease of use, I'm not familiar so much with the other ones, but I know that Barton is, if a parent is able to hear, or they can, look for a certified a tutor or a speech pathologist that does this kind of work and has the background, that even if they're not certified in that program, being a speech pathologist, you have a lot of background that will help you. This is part of our gig, for a lot of us. So yeah, that's something that parents can definitely look up, and I can put a little info in there too for that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That was a lot of amazing information. Is there anything else that we need to know? Any
See,
other activities or?
the grab bag thing is great, but I think the idea of the bowl rolling, the bowl back and forth, jumping through the hoops, like you can use that for all of these levels of phonological skill. And just overall in terms of language development, just be talking to your kids, showing a lot. Think of, play the role of the narrator. I tell parents when, if you're watching a documentary, Morgan Freeman does a lot of those, he's got that nice voice. Um, but notice how even if you're watching a documentary, they're telling you everything that you're seeing, right? They're talking, they're always explaining about what you're seeing. So be that way, be the narrator. Talk about what your child is doing, what they're seeing, what they're feeling, their emotions. Just be talking a lot. And you may feel that, you're talking all the time, but you know what? Our kids really need that kind of language rich environment to really grow their language. And be repetitive. If you find that your child is not maybe using as many words as you hope they would have at that age, you just choose one or two new words to repeat within an activity and be really, really repetitive. Just keep saying that one word over and over and over again. Work it into the play so it's normal and natural for you to say it again and again. And don't be afraid to be repetitive with new vocabulary. That's how our kids will learn. There was one other thing that just went in and out of my mouth, my head when I was not my mouth. I wanted it to come out of my mouth. What was the last little bit when you said? I don't know. I think it's gone.
I'll add into that, especially if you have younger kids. Well, actually, pretty much anyone. If you really think about the way we learn sometimes, especially if we have had bad experiences with maybe getting in trouble or shamed for not knowing something, or if you just have that personality where you like to do things perfectly, it just because you say it over and over for even like a month doesn't mean it's just gonna happen. Like, it's gonna happen in their own time. It's just a matter of making sure you keep modeling. And it's the same with, emotional intelligence. It's the same with language intelligence. All of it. It's just about modeling it over and over and over again.
And being patient with it. And I remembered what I wanted to say, is that we do have there's a lot of information out there on the internet. We can get norms and charts for all sorts of information. And I would just kind of tell people just to be aware. One thing I want to say is for moms to trust their mom gut. Trust your gut. If you're concerned that something maybe isn't exactly how you were hoping it would be, or you're worried, go and find out. Get a professional to have a look at your child, because we all know that early intervention is so important. We can make lifelong changes if we act early, if there's something to be acting on. I was going to say about the charts that we see in terms of sound development, speech sound development. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of those charts, they'll have what time you should see, what age you should see this child making these sounds. But you have to realize that almost all of those charts, when they show the age, that's the age that about 90 to 95% have mastered that sound. So if you're waiting for your child, let's say for an example, because R is like the latest developing sound. If you're waiting till your child is about 7 or 8 years old to get that R sound, it's going to be way behind, because there's prerequisite sounds that are kind of developing. There's part of that sound that's being developed earlier on. So if we wait till the child is 8, it's going to be a lot harder to change it. They've been making the sound differently for all those years. They're not listening the same way when we're little. We say it. Does it match? Does it match? Does it match? If it doesn't, we make an adjustment when we're really young. But as we get to be about 4, 5, 6 years old, we're not listening the same way. We're focused on the language part. Remember the difference between speech and language? We're thinking of the language part. So I'm not listening to how I'm saying it anymore. Well, then you have to try to get a kid to kind of listen in again and self-monitor. And it can be a challenge. It's a lot. It's another step. It's a longer process. So just be aware when you see like norm charts on sound development, or don't wait till you're at the tail end of that chart to take some action. Take some action, ask questions, get a screening or an assessment if you're concerned. Don't forget to check into, people have insurance coverage for some of these services. So rather than just putting it off, trust your mom gut. Mom guts are very accurate. Very accurate. After all the years I've been working, yeah, very, very few times have I had parents that were concerned and really didn't have anything to be worried about. If you feel it, check it out. Always better to check it out and know you're good.
Yeah, I say that a lot. I mean, in general, trust your instincts. They're there for a reason, especially mama instincts.
Yes, I agree. For sure.
I love that. Thank you so much. And where can people, if they really have enjoyed you and want to kind of know more, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Facebook at Denise Wagstaff Speech Language Therapy and Accent Modification Services. But if you look me up on Facebook, you'll be able to find me. And you can also email if you want. You can email me at speechy.keen@gmail.com. speechy.keen@gmail.com. I'll put that in some of the PDFs that I have. I'll have my letterhead on there, and people can feel free to shoot me off an email or message me on Facebook. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has, or give any direction or any resources that I can share. I'm happy to do that.
That's awesome. Thank you. And you guys, those activities get in your PE and your language.
That's right.
So there you go. You've killed 2 birds with 1 stone. That's the miracle of homeschooling.
There you go.
So thank you so much, Denise. And if you enjoyed this, please make sure you leave her a comment. If you have a question, leave a comment. And we'll also make sure to get the links so that you can contact her yourself if you need to.
That'd be great.
Thanks so much.
Good. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you enjoyed this, please make sure you subscribe and leave a rating and review, especially in iTunes. That would really help. And remember, we have a Facebook group for moms of littles at facebook.com/groups/thisindulgentlife, where you, for right now, can get that free 5-day Calmer, More Joyful You challenge, as well as all of the lives that I do weekly, as well as all of the tips and tricks that I give and post weekly, and the fun that we have. So come and join us. I really want it to be a place of encouragement, of learning, and honestly a place to kind of de-stress. So I cannot wait to see you there. And remember, you can find all of the show notes at thisindulgentlife.com/29. Until next week, I hope you have an inspired week, and remember to take some time for yourself.